Good afternoon and welcome back to our session. Our session is one of these Meet the Expert sessions. And we are delighted to welcome to the Parliamentary Pavilion. Let me get this right. Your title, of course, is Wenxin Li. But Wenxin, you're Senior Climate Change Specialist at the Global Environment Facility. And we've invited you to share with members of Parliament information, just a presentation on the GEF, and in particular, what is new on the agenda for GEF. Yeah, we had a similar presentation last year, so we really want to know what's changed in the last 1 year. So I know that you've got some slides, so I'll hand the stage over to you, and please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, it's on. Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity to be here to talk about how GEF provides supports to climate actions and other areas, environmental areas, and which is quite unique about the GEF. I'll go to my slide. Okay, I'll just jump right into it. So as you can see here, we were established at the eve of the Rio summits in 1992. So we have been around for quite a while, and we are the largest multilateral funds that are focused on environmental issues. And we are focused on a variety of environmental issues, as you can see here. So this is the climate change logo. This is the COP that we are attending now. But we also have the UNCCD, which is for land degradation. And also by CBD and the BBNJ, they are to address biodiversity losses. And we also have Home and Minamata to address chemicals. So these are the foundation and the mandate for the GEF. And so we are financial mechanism under all these conventions. And the way we help to finance the climate actions is through our partners. We are a small organization based in Washington, D.C., but the recipients are all over the world. So we are partnering with 18 agencies to help all of you to access the funding. And these agencies are mostly UN agencies and MDBs, but there are also other organizations that have either a global or regional footprints, and there are a few also that are national focused as well. Sorry, I need to find. Okay, next slide. So this is the areas, we call them focal areas. And so these are basically environmental topics and environmental actions that we are financing. Of course, here we have climate change mitigation, but I will also get into some other focal areas because there is a lot of synergy between these different environmental issues. As you can see, for example, land degradation. There are issues related to water, related to resilience, but also restoring ecosystem also help to sequester soil's carbon. That is also very important, the mitigation solution. And so the GEF as a global environmental facility, in a way, is a family of funds. It's not a one single fund. And the biggest fund within this family of funds is GEF Trust Fund. And so that fund is used to cover these focal areas that are part of addressed by the Rio Conventions. I'll also get into more of this fund in particular. And also to serve the climate COP, UNFCCC, we have a few other funds. One is called LDCF. That's only for LDC countries to address the adaptation financing need. And SCCF is for all developing countries, but it has a particular window for CIS countries. And there are allocations for each LDC and CIS. These are to finance adaptation solutions. We also have funding that's called Capacity Building Initiative for Transparency. So this is to address the need to build capacity for the enhanced transparency framework that is developed under the Paris Agreement. So this supports countries to build the capacity to address requirements under the transparency element of the Paris Agreement. What's new is the GEF fund, which is it's the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund. And of course, the focus is biodiversity, but it also helps to address land-related mitigation and adaptation issues. Here, I will get into a bit how the trust fund works within the GEF. So first you look at the chart on the right. So each bar represents a 4-year cycle. And the number is the amount of funding available within that 4-year period. And so GEF 8 is the period that we are currently in, and the resources available is $5.3 billion. And so we are about halfway through, a bit over halfway through this cycle, and the coming year we are going to already start looking at what's new is we are going to start looking at how we want to design the GEF 9. The next replenishment cycle, what are our programming strategies and focuses, and we'll do a wide consultation with our donor countries, our recipient countries, different experts. We want to collect their inputs on how we should design the focus for the next replenishment cycle. And what is also quite unique about GEF is that a significant portion of the funding available is allocated at the country level. So at the beginning of the cycle, every country has a predefined allocation that is basically for the country to decide how to use to meet the commitments, the actions they would like to implement under these different conventions. Of course, UNFCCC is one of the conventions. And also what is new in this cycle is that we are trying to promote a more integrated approach. We understand that every country has commitments and targets under the different conventions. And there is a lot of synergy to design projects or programs that could serve targets and actions that you would like to implement under different conventions. So this is our integrated approach to promote transformative changes. I'll also get into specifics on what integrated programs we have in this cycle. So again, these are the focal areas that the trust funds try to address as environmental issues: biodiversity, climate change mitigation, land degradation, international waters, and the chemical waste. And our integrated programs aim to address at least 2 or even more of these focal areas. For example, I use a food system as an example, and we all know food system, unfortunately, it's definitely very important for livelihood, for food security. It also contributes about 1/3 of global emissions. So how do we address emissions associated with food system? At the same time, we know they are a big driver for conversion of prime forests into agricultural land. Because we have a growing population, we have need to grow more crops to produce more food. So this is also a driver for the loss of biodiversity. And of course, land degradation is also impacting the productivity and the efficiency of food system. So how do we look at food system in an integrated manner that we could also help to address all of these issues? And of course, even they have fertilizer uses, etc. So there's also linkage with the chemical waste. So I'll just stop here with one example, but you can see this is how we aim to help you to design programs that look at areas or sectors that help you to address all these environmental issues. Most of the trust funds are grants-based, so they are grants allocated to individual countries. We also have a blended finance window, so they are non-grant instruments that even though they are not grants, but they are highly concessional. So they are loans, equity guarantees that are very open to risk-taking, so help you to involve private sectors as well to provide solutions to these different areas. And then we also have a small grants program, also get into that a bit more later on. And that helps you to also provide funding to indigenous communities, to CSOs that will help them to mobilize more community level activities to address climate issues and other environmental issues. I'm going faster, but if you have questions, let me know as well, and we can stop. So here is a little bit more granular view of the trust fund allocation. And so you can see total trust fund is about 5.3 billion for 4 years. And then we have this about a bit less than half goes to star allocation. The star allocation is really at every single country level, we are allocating a particular amount of funding. And this funding is based on the global environmental benefits that the country have a potential to generate, and GDPs, and also how they have been performing over the previous GEF cycles. So this is how it's allocated, and you can see that this allocation has a sub-allocation within biodiversity, climate mitigation, and land degradation. But what is interesting and new about this cycle is that there is a full flexibility, which means that the country decides, for example, Bangladesh has $10 million. They can decide whether they want to follow this ratio between biodiversity and climate mitigation, land degradation for about 5 and 2, or they think this 4 years, biodiversity is really important for me. I want to allocate maybe 80% of funding to biodiversity, but the rest going. So it's really a country-driven process, and they decide, or you decide, where the priorities are for the country over this 4-year period. Question here.
Yeah, just a question about how the countries get the funds. So who decides on the figure per country? I understand that the countries can determine the allocation between the different sectors, but who decides on the allocation per country? What's the formula used?
This is at the beginning of the 4-year cycle, replenishment cycle. All the countries, recipient countries, donor countries, together design the rules for allocation. And so some of the indicators I mentioned is what are the benefits index. They also vary between the countries. Also, there is a capacity related GDP index, and there's also, so there are a few parameters that is taken into account in this allocation. And so it's all the countries together agree on this allocation. Yeah.
And the chart that you have there, that's the current allocation for
That's
GEF
the
aids.
current
Okay,
allocation,
thank
and
you.
it's published. And also want to mention that for GEF, we also have a national focal point for every single recipient country. And they are published on our website. So who is the national focal points within each country is known to, basically, it's complete public information. And so through the national focal point, the country decides what project they want to support. So once they are endorsed by the country through the national focal point, we will receive the submission. So that's so we don't decide what projects to pick, but really the country decides what projects to pick. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Can we know how many African countries you have a focal person there?
Every single country has
African countries.
Every
Okay.
single African country has a recipient point.
South Sudan has?
Yeah, I'm sure. I think they receive funding, they have projects. It's
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I can just add that from Globe's experience, we have had programs funded before, which have been multi-country across Africa. We've worked very closely with each of the GEF country focal points in the design and execution.
Thank you. My name is Caroline. My question would be, because of the role of MPs, their role is not sort of implementation. Theirs is oversight, representation, and legislation. So for the purposes of this fund, it would make sense if within the areas they've the areas that you have listed down, that we are the area around, well, as you may be aware, Africa is, most of it is adaptation-led. Most of the programs are adaptation-led. So you'll find MPs, their work is to actually gain an understanding of these areas so that they can be able to write legislation or support the national agenda. So for my question would be, is there a way in which you can make this a I like the way Malini has just said. I was going to ask you whether there's a multi-country project sort of to support all these members of parliament to undertake awareness or to create laws that are consistent across a region. Because these members of parliament belong to a network. I don't know whether, Malini, you're aware that there's a network of parliamentarians in the Africa region. So these members can drive that agenda across the 54 countries. So I don't know whether you're able to do that, because as parliaments, we are not accredited entities to receive funding, but I know with the support of Malini, we can actually have a proposal for members to be capacity built and have a multi-country proposal for that.
Yeah.
Because we have that under the Green Climate Fund.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I just provide an example? Yeah. So this is a very good question, because in the past, Globe has worked with Senegal, Nigeria, and DRC. We did a project over 3 years, which was to assess legislative readiness for RED+. And this was working directly with parliaments to identify the shortcomings within the current legislation. So it provided guidance. And this fit perfectly at that time, because of course the priorities changed from GEF to GEF. But for the current one, I'm very excited because of the focus on the enhanced transparency framework. So we very much want to work with a range of countries developing those multi-country partnerships to develop capacity of parliamentarians to exercise their scrutiny roles in particular. So we'll have that conversation afterwards, but we have done it before, and so we've got some experience at least. Any other questions?
Well, maybe I could add to the answer as well. So yeah, I talked very much about the country level perspective, but we do have a lot of our programs, our regional programs or global programs, and that generally includes a coordination within the region or globally. Even, for example, the food system integrated program I mentioned, it covers, in this cycle, they cover over 30 countries. And there is a global child project that helps to coordinate the knowledge management, etc., among the regions, countries. And I also want to mention that because we offer grants, and a lot of time we have elements about enabling policies and or partnership building or institutional capacity related. So, where we also recognize, the funding is limited. Sometimes we may not have the capacity to influence legislation, but we know that this is the most powerful source really to mobilize resources. We are just a little piece that maybe can be leveraged, but once the enabling policy is developed, there's a much stronger potential to scale up the activities that we're supporting more as a pilot, more as a demonstration project, but policy environment is very important for scaling adaptation or mitigation activities. Yeah, I'll just add that.
Okay, thank you, Lee. You've actually answered the question I wanted to ask, because I was going to ask, you've talked about the country programs. What about a collaboration like the ones we have like in a network in the continent? But you've been able to answer that. Then the other issue I wanted to bring to your attention is that I've been following GEF. Besides government, there are these GEF small grants, but the task, the bureaucracy involved, and it's just very complicated and very hard to access funding from GEF. That is at the grassroots. So I don't know how that is going to be readjusted so that it's flexible for people who are deserving and who qualify to be able to access these monies.
Yeah, I think definitely we are, we continuously try to streamline our process. But I fully recognize that it's not always easy, and I think in terms of access, there's also elements that. In a way, we do not select the projects. Once the projects are submitted by country, we work with the proponent of projects, the executing agency in the country, or the implementing agency that I talked about. So we work with them to prepare the design of the facility, the program or project, and the implementation. But who gets to access, who doesn't, it's not really our decision. But once you are selected by your focal point in the country, we proactively work with you. Whatever support we need, we give you feedback. We work together to refine the proposal to get it through the council approval process. So I hope that helps as well. Okay, then. So this is the 2.43 billion, a bit less less than half of the total pot that's allocated to the country. But as you can see, we also have for portions of the funding that's just for incentivizing integrated programs, those global and regional programs. And we also have for pots for funding for enabling activities that are related to commitments and the requirements under the convention. And the global and the regional set aside is to support those regional and the global activities, non-grant instruments. There is also small grants program. So this is a program that funding is up to, I think, 50,000. It's really to work with civil societies and the small community organizations. And we have also innovation window. So this is a composition of the funding within this cycle. Yes, so I touch upon some of this. So we have, it's majority especially the STAR allocation is 100% funding. And we have, even though we cover multiple focal areas of environmental issues, we expect about 80% of the funding would be have co-benefits in climate mitigation or adaptation. And because it's grant funding, we do not need a sovereign guarantee, so there is no debt ceiling related issue for the recipient country. And so it's upfront allocation every 4 years. At the beginning of those 4 years, you know how much funding your country will have. So that helps to bring predictability on the resources available, and every country can start planning early on. And as I mentioned, we have very high appetite for risk taking, and so really try to support piloting and demonstration projects for innovative technologies. So here for climate, as related to climate, this is the climate mitigation focal area and the trust fund. But we also have I mentioned earlier, the LDC F and SCCF for adaptation financing, and what is so-called integrated programs, I touch upon that, and the blended finance. So these are different components within the GEF for family of funds that are providing adaptation and mitigation solutions. I'll go a bit more into the focal area, the mitigation focal areas. So what are the type of technologies and solutions that we would like to focus on? It is the climate change mitigation strategy is more or less divided into we put it under 2 pillars. One is really to promote innovation, technology transfer, and enabling policies. And that is also further characterized into 4 sub-objectives. One is related to the efficient use of energy and the materials. The second one is about decarbonized power and energy system related to the energy use, how we can transition from fossil fuel into zero emission energy sources. And the third one is zero emission mobility. This is mostly related to electric mobility, and we have a global program that is supporting electric mobility. And the last one is nature-based solutions with high mitigation potential. So they are generally related to forestry, land use change, and agriculture activities. And the last one is related to enabling conditions for countries to meet the commitments under the convention. And the first one is the Paris Agreement, the enhanced transparency reporting requirements. And the second one is the requirements, obligations under the convention. So there are dedicated funding to support each country to improve their MRV system for climate actions. And so then we have two other funds that are dedicated to climate adaptation. And one is the LDC fund, LDCF, that's for LDCs only. And then we have for SCC fund. It's eligible, all developing countries are eligible, but most of the funding are allocated to SIDS, the small island developing states. And so these two funds together have provided about $2 billion in grants for almost 100 countries. And so they are used to support national, regional, global projects similar to the mitigation funding. And together, even though we operate a family of funds, these funds can be pulled together to support activities. So if you have a project that contributes both to adaptation and the mitigation activities, then you can access the different funds together to support your project. And so this is the strategic priority for our adaptation fund financing over these 4 years. So one is agriculture. We all know that agriculture is very vulnerable to climate change, flooding or higher temperature, drought. And the drought is, so we also have the priority theme that specifically related to access to water to address drought issues. And we also have funding for early warning and climate information system. This is a help to improve resilience to address vulnerability. And last is just dedicated to support nature-based solutions to enhance the resilience. So this is a funding that's allocated for LDCF, for LDC countries over 4 years. So 20 million is allocated for each of the LDC countries. So this is determined upfront that every country can allocate it to adaptation activities. So then there are also a competitive process. So this is not competitive. The country decides how to use 20 million. There are also programs that are competitive or that are open to projects from anywhere in the world. So those are the grant funding available. There are also some policy requirements to access those funding. So we would like to see co-financing, for example, from the private sector or other sources, but it could also be from MDBs, from international sources. And we want to ensure that the project engages stakeholders. Definitely policymakers are important stakeholders that they really need to engage, especially to develop a newer enabling policy, but also at different level, industry associations, farmer associations. So there are what relevant stakeholders need to be identified and engaged at the different steps of the project. And also we have gender requirements. Many activities need to be gender sensitive. And we also have environmental social safeguards. And we also want the projects to collect the knowledge and the learning and to enable that information to build capacity. Sometimes we say access is difficult. It's partly also we have these type of requirements. It's make the projects more complex, but we hope that it will also enhance the impacts from those projects through these. And these are all issues that we are trying to address within this convention as well, right? We want to make sure indigenous communities are involved. We want to make sure that there are gender considerations in our activities. And the next couple slides will be about our small grants program. It's also quite interesting because some of our projects tend to be big. They try to address, for example, food system, the value chains, a lot of big stakeholders. But we also see that it's important to involve community-based solutions. So these are a few thematic areas. So about community-based management of ecosystem and species, sustainable agriculture and the fisheries. And so farmers can be involved in this area. And the low carbon energy access co-benefits, so providing solar solutions, irrigation solutions, for example, and also other thematic areas. So this is the idea is that we want to promote inclusion of women and youth, indigenous communities, indigenous population, and the local communities. And also to facilitate the collaboration between different stakeholders, government, civil society organization, and the private sector, and also to build a grassroots capacity as well. And this is also new in this small grants. This small grants program has been running for decades, but for this cycle, we also introduced microfinance initiatives and the challenge program. These are competitive windows rather than allocated funding to countries. So this is really to allow micro entrepreneurs to access finance for climate and environmental solutions. And this is to allow civil society to access finance for innovations. And the next I will be talking about, this is the new fund that GEF has. It's focused on global, it's developed under the CBD Convention, the Biodiversity Convention, but it also has a lot of co-benefits because they will be preserving ecosystems, they will be preserving forestry, sustainable forestry management, protected areas. This is also important for forestry land use related issues under UFCCC. And what is also interesting, this is under COP, and we was established really just 2023. And what is also new, I don't have a slide on that. It's also we are trying to further streamline the process. Here we are trying to introduce one-step process rather than concept review and then the final endorsement two-step process. So we are trying to test some more innovative processes here to allow easy access, and hopefully that's lessons learned will feed back into the climate funds as well. My presentation ends here, so I don't know if there are further questions. It's a lot of information about the GEF, so.
Really informative, and I think that you've certainly whetted the appetite for more, yeah? So we've kept you for a long time, but if you've got a few minutes more, yeah, let's just, since everybody's here, if you can also just introduce yourselves. Yeah, I think there is a roving microphone still somewhere in the back. Thank you, that's much easier. Start with you, please.
Oh, thank you very much. My name is Silo Abraham Hakani, a member of Parliament from Lesotho, and also a member of ANPEC, Africa Network on Africa Network on climate change, anyway, of parliamentarians on climate change. My question is so simple. Is it possible to access this presentation that you're doing?
Oh, yeah, I shared.
Then to just to share.
So all of the presentations that you see here in the pavilion, we will share them with you as a PDF.
Okay.
So at the end of every day. So today we've had several. So
Okay.
just watch out for it, because as long as you're on the WhatsApp group, you will get all of them. Are you on the parliamentary WhatsApp group?
No, I think I will have to.
Oh, I
join
see.
the
No, that's
WhatsApp,
easy.
yeah.
My colleague Nameka will take your details now. So
Okay.
you will get it. Not a problem.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Quick one. My name is Kofi Kumasi from Africa Adaptation Initiative. I would like to maybe revive one question regarding how to ensure that the funds that are mobilized go to the grassroots communities. So I would like to know what is the, and you, based on your answer, I would like to know what monitoring and evaluation mechanism the GEF can put in place in order to ensure that the funds that are mobilized at maybe that are mobilized specifically go at the grassroots communities. That's the first one. And the second one is related to stakeholder engagement. How concretely the GEF ensure that stakeholders are engaged during the development, the project development process, and to what extent the GEF monitor or evaluate this the level of stakeholder engagement. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, stakeholder engagement is very important for us. So when we review the project, we will already review who are the stakeholders, the project proponents already consulted before sending the concept to us. So we want to make sure during the design phase, they already have consulted relevant stakeholders. And we also provide feedback. Sometimes we think some stakeholders are important, they didn't consult. We also provide feedback so they can involve them in the design phase. And also at the design phase, they have a stakeholder engagement plan. So they will lay out in the project implementation, what's the plan to consult relevant stakeholders. And that varies based on the type of program we're talking about, right? For example, if we're talking about the food system, of course, farmers would be very relevant stakeholders, but it could be also the value chain players for agriculture and the food sector. If we have, for example, I mentioned e-mobility project, then they really need to consult maybe the transportation-related players in the country, right? Could be bus operators, but it could also be minibus, like private sector operators as well. So these are the things that we ask them to clarify. They have to develop the stakeholder engagement plan. Coming back to, I think your first question is related to how civil society is included, or
how to ensure if there is any monitoring and evaluation plan in place to ensure that the funds mobilized go to the grassroots communities.
So grassroots communities would be either one part of the stakeholders that they will have to engage in the process, or especially in the small grants program, they are the recipients of the funding. And for us, we have one is that there's an implementing. So the execution agency is in the country. So they could be a government agency, could be other organizations that are implementing the projects as selected by the national focal points. There's also implementing agency help us oversee to ensure that the funding are used to implement what is proposed in the concept or the proposal. And for us, we also have a midterm and terminal evaluation during the implementation of the project that has to be prepared. There is a budget allocated in the beginning, but it needs to be prepared by a third party to evaluate how the implementation is basically takes place according to the concept, and also following all the different plans. Stakeholder engagement plan is one of them, how they are followed as well. So that's we rely on these type of processes to ensure that the projects are implemented as proposed.
Yeah, and I have to say from experience that this is a very robust and a very stringent process, which is the reason why it takes such a long time, because the design process itself, that 1 year, you can get allocated money just to design your process properly. Yeah, this is pre-project. And then during the course of it, there's lots of review processes. So in our case in the past, we used UNEP as our implementation partner. Yeah, so it's not for the faint-hearted. It requires you to have very robust internal processes in terms of administration, project management, finance, etc. So the bar is quite high for the party which presents an application along with their relevant partners. Yeah.
But this is also to address concern that the funding goes to where it needs to go, right? So that's why we have this process as well.
So let's just have perhaps one final question or comment. Okay, 2 hands go up. Okay, if you can keep it brief, please. So there's the microphone for both of you.
Thank you. I'm not a member of parliament. I'm here at COP to represent the refugees. I'm a South Sudanese refugee who live in Uganda. My question is very brief. Does refugee-led organization qualify to apply for the fund? And why do you make it very complicated for organization to access the fund? Because sincerely, the climate disasters happens every day. So if the process is very long, there's a lot of paperwork. That means a lot of organization is going to not receive the fund, or the fund might come very late when a lot of destruction has happened already. So we should make process very easy so that organization receive, especially in Africa, like there's so many restrictions that Africans, civil society can't access big funding. There's always pilot 50,000, 20,000, which cannot even serve 10,000 people.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think for the small grants, 50,000 I think is the lower bound, but there are, I think the upper limit, I forgot, is 700,000 or so. It could go quite high up as well. And so UNEP, UNDP, FAO, they all are implementing agency for those small grants program. And because they also have footprint in the countries, right? So they have the relationship with CSOs in those countries, different groups in the countries, so they can have a better sense on how the funding should be allocated within the country to these groups. So we do not make those decisions directly. It's also to simplify the process, right? We delegate those decisions for small grants to these organizations. So they work with also, again, the national focal points. A lot of times I understand there's a small committee to decide how they, so we don't approve which CSO gets the funding. So the committee will decide how the funding is further dispersed within the country for small grants. Yeah.
So if I can also explain that there is a hierarchy of funding organizations, yeah? So GEF is at the very top because it is the largest. So it's probably the least comparable, the least suited for very small organizations. Because for smaller organizations, they don't really have what we call the absorptive capacity for very large sums of money. So for them, in the hierarchy of funding organizations, there are many others. So for example, there's Dutch development agencies like HIVOS, who would be a very suitable partner. They will give grants in the region of $5,000 to $50,000, yeah, which are much more suited, because the larger you get, the more the transaction costs become, which is why they work through intermediary organizations. Yeah, even in our case, we had to work with a partner because we were still at the small grants recipient, even if it's hundreds of thousands of US dollars. Yeah? But this is really to give you an idea. If you want to be very ambitious, you want to apply for large grants which are multi-year with a significant institution, perhaps private sector body, a trade association or a university association or a government department or a local municipality, because now you have a sustainable cities programs also. That's the level that we're thinking. The gentleman in the back, please.
Hello. It's just, I'm sorry I came quite late. I'm just trying to see, when you say parliamentary thing, does it apply to cities as well, elected representatives on municipalities and places like that?
Oh, is it
And then
quite
that is one question. The other thing is, say, like I'm leading a partnership between a United Nations association and a municipality in Uganda. So, so do the partners have to be in the same category, so to speak, municipality to municipality, but then we do have elected representatives on the partnership, but do we really qualify for any of the grants, mainly for, say, travel grants from Kampala to London and so on?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that, because the happy answer is that yes, you are certainly eligible. So within the Globe community, for example, we used to be